Hello and welcome to part 2 of Gaming Buzz episode 15, our discussion with Jason on RPGs, role-playing games. If you have not yet checked out part 1 of this episode, make sure to do so. There will be a link to it in the show notes for this episode. Now let's just jump right into our discussion. So for someone who's just starting to really get into RPGs, what are some games you would recommend as day one purchases, games that you expect to see in someone's RPG collection? Jason, since you have the biggest RPG collection here, why don't we start with you? What's one game you'd recommend?
God, where do you want me to start? Like I said, one of my go-to ones. I mean, I'm a glutton for pain, so Dark Souls, but because Dark Souls does not tailor to a wide crowd, Legend of Gaia does have to be one of my actual go-to games.
That you keep teasing me with that game. I'm gonna have to buy that now.
Other than that, it really depends on what you're looking for, and if you're looking for a multiplayer RPG, you can get the Baldur's Gates, you can get Champions in Norrath.
That's something I actually forgot to bring up earlier.
Those are some of the more rare multiplayer RPGs, and probably some of the only ones I can fully think of that are.
We need more multiplayer RPGs. I mean, there are so many single-player only RPGs out there, it's not even funny. And then if you get into multiplayer, most of them just are MMOs.
Or Pokemon.
And for those people who like medieval ones that aren't necessarily a Skyrim person, there's Kingdoms of Amalur.
I have heard of that. Actually, I have that. It had a PS3 release, right?
Yeah, PS3 and Xbox 360, and sadly we won't see any more games from the developer, but it was a fantastic game, and if it's what RPGs could have been in the future from that company, I would have liked to see them stick around.
Is it bad that I have 3 copies of that and I've never played it? Long story short, I bought a copy used for $5, and then my girlfriend, when she came and moved into my apartment, she brought her PS3 games, and she had a copy as well, and then I found a sealed copy at a garage sale for $1, which has just been sitting on a shelf.
I was going to say I would keep that one there.
I probably will, but I really should play one of the other ones because I've heard good things about them. I hear they're not perfect, but they're pretty good.
Yes. For the people who like the grind, Etrian Odyssey and Disgaea will take you forever to beat.
I do really like Disgaea. I'm not a big fan of Etrian Odyssey.
They aren't for everybody, but they will take you forever to beat.
Aren't they kind of like those old school RPGs that come after the text-based ones?
You can draw your own maze on the bottom of the screen on the DS and everything. It's pretty awesome.
Kind of reminds me of a lot of those computers or the games you would play on a lot of old DOS computers.
You know, it's weird because I've played several of them, and I just could not get into them. Yet Persona Q came out, which is almost like a clone, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was just pacing is the biggest issue with them, because they are very slow.
And I'm surprised the next game isn't on Darien's list. Pokemon Gale of Darkness is actually considered an RPG.
I really like that.
It's probably, outside of the normal adventure games, probably the best Pokemon game they have done.
Yeah, if you own a GameCube and you don't own either Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness or its prequel, Pokemon Coliseum, you are doing something very wrong because they are both excellent. I'd say XD is a little bit better.
Yeah. I beat XD, but I never beat Coliseum because Coliseum bored me to tears. But XD actually kept me pretty intrigued to the end.
My favorite thing about Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, it's the only Pokemon game ever made with an emoji directly in its name. XD.
But I am also a sucker for turn-based RPGs, so stuff like Spectral Force, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Suikoden Tactics style stuff I absolutely love.
You're talking like your more strategy RPG kind of stuff?
It's ones I prefer, but I played a lot of others. Oh, and for those DS fans, World's Ends with You is where I should probably end that list.
Oh, I'm going to fight you on that because that was the game I was about to bring up. The World Ends With You is my second favorite game of all time. And I know I love it a little bit too much, but it is the biggest definition of a hidden gem ever.
It is.
It is easily, I know this is a bit controversial, it is the best DS game ever.
Yeah, I have to very much almost agree with you. I can't think of anything much better than that on the DS for RPG people.
I've never played that game, but I've listened to the soundtrack so many times. Its soundtrack is really good, and I usually don't listen to soundtracks that I've never played the game of, but I haven't got my hands on it yet because I just haven't seen a copy, or when I do see a copy, I just don't have the money for it. So it's just one of those games that I'm a sucker for soundtracks, and oh my god, its soundtrack is so good.
That's one of those DS games I would pick up right away because there's no way, right now it's sitting in like the $15 to $20 range, there's no way it's going to stay there. No. You know, once DS collecting picks up, that's going to be one of those $50 to $60 games because, you know what, it didn't sell well. It's incredibly sought after. You know, it will be. It is now by the people who know about it, and it's fun.
And it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's got the best soundtrack of any DS game. It's just, I could talk about that game for an entire podcast. And the fact that it's portable is wonderful. You know, a lot of the RPGs we've been talking about have been console games. But you know what? RPGs can be fun on the go. The issue is that so many RPGs are designed for long periods. There aren't very many games you can just pick up and play and then put back down. The World Ends With You is definitely designed as a handheld-friendly game. Another game that comes to mind like that is Dragon Quest IX. And this is, I know a lot of people who really like Dragon Quest, and this is the most like polarizing game they've ever put out in the series. You either love it, like me, and I know Darien really likes it too.
Oh, yeah.
Or you hate it. And there are two big reasons for that. One, the game is very open-ended. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want. You create your own character and party, and you completely customize them. So you don't get that character development for your main party, but you do get it with a lot of the side characters and, you know, your villains and your, like, almost sidekicky kind of characters.
Yeah, it does it kind of feels like a tabletop RPG in the sense that, like, you craft every character yourself.
That's exactly how I'd put it. The other reason a lot of people don't like it, and is probably my favorite reason, or my favorite part of the game, it's simple. The battle system in that game is basically the battle system from the first three Dragon Warrior in the US, the first Dragon Quest games. It's toned down and made to be simple, just like old RPGs. But everything else is a new take on the genre. Have you played Dragon Quest IX, Jason?
I have not.
Okay. Basically take all those complex battle systems and throw them out the window. It is as like bare bones of a battle system as you can get, but that's one of the things that makes it so rewarding.
It's super good for people who are just getting into RPGs because I'm really stupid when it comes to RPGs. Like, I just can't micromanage everything because that just tends to be the kind of person I am. I'm not very good at micromanaging a billion things. But this game's actually very understandable. It gives me things in bite-sized chunks that I can actually take hold of.
And, you know, I did say it's simple. It is simple, but it's presented in a way where it's really simple, but underneath that all, it's still a complex RPG, but it feeds it to you in a way that it's super easy to understand, almost like how Pokemon does it. Pokemon is an incredibly complicated battle system, but it's presented in such a simple way that it makes sense.
Yeah, I see Pokemon as like you're the trainer, and then your Pokemon are like each an individual moves, and then it just gets, or like your magic types kind of, or like fighting types, and then you switch the kind of thing, but you have to pay a turn kind of thing. So It's really complex if you think of it that way, but like each Pokemon is not its individual self if you compare like the Pokemon trainer being the main character of the game.
So you guys would agree that the Final Fantasy series is the biggest JRPG series.
Are arguable because Final Fantasy's had how many variations now on top of the normal, like the straight up like 4, 5, 6, 7. Shin Megami is arguably probably had more games overall for that series.
That may be true. I'm thinking more like culturally.
But as far as a more primary stay game, Final Fantasies are probably it.
Chances are when people think RPG, the first thing that's going to come to mind is Final Fantasy.
And more than likely Final Fantasy 7.
Right.
And if you care about the whole genre, you'll probably think of Shin Megami Tensei before because there's more games.
What is your favorite Final Fantasy game, Jason?
I want to say 7, but for the sake of it, because like I said, I do love my turn-based strategy, and I think it was well written, well played out. Final Fantasy Tactics in that series is definitely my favorite, especially if you pick up the PSP one and you have a friend with it. There is a multiplayer campaign there that is just out of this world awesome, and it actually gives you the challenge that you look for in that game.
Tactics did some things with the story that I don't think, it took some risks that I don't think you'd see in a main series Final Fantasy game. Because there was some really like dark imagery, especially in the first Tactics game. Like, holy cow.
And some hidden characters that, unless you knew they were there, you probably weren't ever going to find them.
So the reason I asked you first is I'm pretty sure that Darien and I have the same favorite Final Fantasy game. Darien, does your favorite Final Fantasy game happen to be Final Fantasy 12?
Yes.
I knew it. We have had several conversations about how it's just wonderful.
In that game, you can't get enough bunny lady butt.
What was her name? Fawn?
Yeah, and it was pretty weird. That lady was pretty scary to me, being kind of young in middle school. I was like, dude, there's a bare butt.
I have the weirdest relationship with Final Fantasy 12 because it was one of the first PS2 games I got. It must have been like 2005, and I got it. But the weird thing was it wouldn't work on my PS2. It got right through the opening sequence, which, spoilers, it's really interesting and something important happens. I can't say what because it is quite a reveal, especially for the beginning of a game. And then you're put somewhere else to do tutorial stuff. And right after the first tutorial section, it would go to load the next area, and it would never load it.
I was kind of stuck in the same situation with my disc. It was actually one of my brother's friends who brought it over, and I borrowed it from him for like a month, and I played it, and then I got stuck, and then I had to actually buy another disc of the game, and then I had to play it through with using both discs, swapping them back and forth, because they each had scratches at certain areas that it would get stuck loading, and it was really bad. And then most recently, I picked up a copy of it, and no problems.
Well, the weird thing was my copy when I got it was brand new, and it had no scratches or anything. It just would not work.
Yeah, it was actually, I think it's one of the first dual layer DVD PS2 games.
But the interesting thing with it was I still really loved it at that point in time. Just that opening section just got me so much that even though it wouldn't work past that point, I probably played through it like 20, 30 times.
It was kind of funny to kill all those little rats.
Yeah, right after that point was when it would freeze. So, and then probably 3 or 4 years later, I got another copy of the game, which just worked, and I 100% completed it, which is not an easy thing to do in a Final Fantasy game.
Especially with 12.
Mm-hmm. It kind of had a spin-off on the DS as well, which was okay. I've played it. I did not have any interest in 100% completing it, though.
I did. It is my fourth favorite of these series. So
all right, list your top 5 in order.
Yeah. It's Tactics, 7, 10, 12, and then probably 8.
Christian, he'll get to hear this when it's live. I know for a fact his favorite Final Fantasy game, I'll share that. His favorite Final Fantasy game is Final Fantasy IX.
I have a hate relationship with 9 that you just you can burn all the copies. I mean, I have a copy for the sake of having a copy, but I will never go back to that game.
Really?
Yeah.
He actually like really, really loves 9, and he swears like it's his favorite game. He even says like, I know it's not the best Final Fantasy game, but I really love it. And if I had to choose a second favorite, it would definitely be Final Fantasy VIII. I really like 8.
I've only really played Final Fantasy 12 and the 2 PSP ones that coincided with 7, and those basically are the only 3, and I actually like the PSP ones a lot better.
2? There was only one PSP one.
There was 2.
No. There was only Crisis Core.
There's Crisis Core, and then there was the other one. There's like Dissidia. Yeah.
Dissidia was a fighting game.
Yeah, I like those.
But it's not directly Final Fantasy
No,
VII.
not.
It's the entire Final Fantasy
Right.
universe. Okay,
Yeah.
You confused me.
Sorry. I thought there was 2.
I like my super serious RPGs, like games that just make you sad or make you feel like you're on an epic adventure and you must save the universe. But one of my favorite RPGs doesn't do that. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. It is a RPG comedy. And why don't more games do that? Because RPG comedies are really good, especially the Mario and Luigi games, even though the series has fallen on some tough times recently, along with the Paper Mario series. Rest in peace, Paper Mario.
Oh, with a paint bucket?
Not just that one. Sticker Star was horrible.
It's okay if you don't think of it as a mainline one, but yeah, it's not the best if you want to put it in the main series. The first one's still, I believe I would say it's the best one.
One of the things I really appreciated about Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga is the fact that Nintendo got to show off their writing skills. There aren't very many Nintendo games that have, books of dialogue. Most of them are very simple dialogue, not that much in it. And it's normally simple, just there to be there, normally to explain something. But the Mario and Luigi series and the Paper Mario series had dialogue in them that was the best part of the games. I mean, the battle systems are great. They're all action-based, so you have to press buttons at the right times to do your special attacks or even play little mini games. But the reason I kept playing them was for the hilarious dialogue. They're really funny. So I guess I'd also put the Paper Mario games in there. If I had to pick one, it would definitely be Paper Mario Thousand Year Door on the GameCube. That game is borderline perfect.
I would definitely say Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii and the port, the OK port on the new 3DS. Yeah, if you have a new Nintendo 3DS, it's like the only physical game that's actually exclusive to the system at the time of the recording. And it's difficult if you don't grind. Like, I'll warn you right away, but if you grind, you'll definitely get through the game pretty easy. This game is huge, and on the Wii, it is gorgeous.
I was really excited that it was getting re-released. Why couldn't they have just made it a downloadable title on the Wii U instead of doing a new 3DS port?
I believe they actually have it as a downloadable Wii game on the eShop, but I think that's just in Europe right now. But there is talks, if I haven't really looked into it, but they definitely do have it on the eShop for the Wii U to download to play in Wii mode.
I foolishly did not pick up a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles when it came out on the Wii. I was kicking myself for not getting it, right when it came out and was GameStop exclusive, because right after its price jumped, it skyrocketed. But then I was at a garage sale, and there was a box of Wii games, and I thought, no, it couldn't be in there. I see, crappy shovelware games. Oh, no. And they were listed at $2 a piece. So I looked through the box, and right there at the bottom was a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles. And I opened the case up, no disc. I was about to scream, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to check these other games and see. I opened them all, no Xenoblade Chronicles. So I went to the person who was running the garage sale. I'm like, hey, do you have the disc for this? They're like, oh, it's in the Wii still. They plug the Wii in, which was sitting on the table they were trying to sell it to. And they pop it out and they go, that would be $2. And I'm thinking, oh, yes. So I paid $2 for a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles.
Which is currently market value at probably $70 to $80.
I actually do not have my copy anymore.
Why?
I traded it. Understand, I traded one of the rarest, most valuable, sought-after games on the Nintendo Wii for probably about $500 worth of GameCube and PS2 games.
Okay, so yeah, then I wouldn't. Yeah, no, fair trade. But yeah, that game. There's roughly, I think they said somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 stateside, and that's it.
I am definitely hunting for another one at garage sales. I've seen one or two come in at like GB Games before, but I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily like to pay $80 for a game.
No, it's I fully understand it. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I recommend if you're wanting to actually play the game currently and you want to get it for really cheap, the new 3DS version is probably the best bet, even though it suffers from graphical downgrades. But if you're just going for the game for the raw game, it is one of the best options because it does have a few extra features in it, like a music mode and a character model viewer. I don't know if many people care about that, but it's a nice little feature to have.
Or you can just play it using Project Dolphin. We won't judge.
Yeah, that it's actually one of the best emulators that does GameCube and Wii, and I've been following it for a while, and depending on the game, you can run it on a very, very crappy computer. But it depends on the game. And not to sound like a broken record, but Xenoblade Chronicles X is another one that I recommend, and that one's still released. That one's still in the store, so you can buy it new as of this recording.
And if you have the money, buy like 3 copies right now. Because basically, the Wii U is already dead. It is deader than dead.
Yeah, it's...
They said about 5% of developers are actually making games for it, which during the Nintendo Direct, I was surprised they focused on the 3DS games and the Wii U games as opposed to the NX, which is what everybody wants to hear about.
Mm-hmm. They're keeping that pretty secret, and I'm getting really fed up with it.
The Xenoblade Chronicles X is another one of those games where if you have an extra copy lying around sealed for some reason, hold on to it.
General rule of thumb, if you have the extra money laying around to do it, when an RPG comes out, buy 2 copies, 1 to play, 1 to leave sealed.
Is this a practice you follow, Jason?
When I have the extra money to follow it, and it's an RPG that I'm pretty sure is probably going to be up there, I try, but it doesn't always work that way.
Have you, do you have any crazy success stories with that?
I have, oh God, RPGs that are still sealed. Let me see. It's going to take me a second to load this up again. I currently have 30 sealed games, including Disgaea 3, the Vita version of Disgaea 3, Disgaea 5 on the PS4, Dragon's Crown on the PS3, which was hand-painted and everything, so it's probably only due to go up in price once the PS3 is done, how many years from now. I have the collector's edition of Hyper Dimension Neptunia. I have the limited edition Final Fantasy X 10-2 for the PS3 still sealed.
I have mine open. I couldn't resist.
It's not going to collect value for a while, but I have Mass Effect 3 still sealed. My Shimigami is the biggest section. I have the FES sealed. I have Devil Summoner 2 with the little figure sealed. Devil Survivors. I have both the Personas for the PSP are still sealed. I have one of them that is actually opened. So, I don't have any of the overly high-priced ones right now, but I do have a few of them that will get that value rather quick.
Absolutely. I see online all the time people saying, "Oh, game collecting is so horrible right now." I'm like, yeah, it is for NES and Super Nintendo, but if you go past those types of systems and go to some of the newer stuff, you are looking at a virtual gold mine.
Oh, yeah.
Now is the time to collect those RPGs on the PS3 and 360, the DS, and the 3DS. Anything before those times, you're starting to get into the pricey range, but that's your sweet spot right now.
There is a particular game, I will not name it just in case, but it's a really, really, really bad game that came out on the Xbox 360 and the PS3, but it's in a well-known series. Horrible game. And it only sold between the two platforms 40,000 copies.
Wow.
And it was a budget title. It's currently selling for like 15 to 20 per copy. So I now have 3 copies on the Xbox 360 sealed, which was the version that sold the worst. They sold like 4,000 of them. I've got 2 copies on the PS3, 1 sealed, 1 open. So I'm just thinking like, maybe someday, especially this series has a track record of going up in value. So it was like, why not? They're cheap. Typically, I don't buy a lot of stuff and keep it sealed, even though I really should be. Mainly because I'm like, well, I could get 2 copies of this cool RPG here and keep 1 sealed, or I can get this RPG, play it, and get another game and play it. So that's kind of my dilemma, even though it really is something everyone should be. Not everyone. That would be horrible. That would probably kill the RPG market. That smart people should be doing.
Yeah, and a couple of other games that I like to say. It may sound like a broken record. It's another Xeno game. It's called Xenosaga, which Xenoblade Chronicles and Chronicles X are actually spiritual successors to Xenosaga. And I only own the first episode. It was released in 3 episodes. And it's a fairly decent game, but I recommend it because it is the first couple of the first 2 are pretty easy to find, but the third one, good luck. And I've only played a little bit of it because I have a lot of other games to play and it didn't quite suck me in, but it definitely looks really nice for being a very early PS2 game. And it's one of those games that I would say if you see it, get it, because the value is a little fluctuation-y with it.
I have one last game to recommend, and this one is one that I have talked about on Gaming Buzz once before. It was when we were doing an episode talking about hidden gem games. And it's a game called Okage Shadow Warrior on the PS2. The game is really, really weird, but it's excellent. The gameplay is okay, but where it really gets props is from, again, its humor and its writing, and also its very unique art style. I've never seen a game that looks like it. And it's cheap. Copies are typically under $10. However, this game is kind of well known because the game itself is dirt cheap, but the merchandise for it is insanely expensive. They made a series of 4 figures for the game. They were nice, cool figures of the characters you could play as in your party. And each one, if you have one in box, is typically about $400 to $500.
Jeez.
I'm surprised you didn't say Ico or Eco.
See, once again, I don't really know if that's an RPG.
Yeah, that one is quite difficult to think about.
Because you don't do any leveling up, do you? I don't think so. I'd consider that an action platformer. I don't know.
Oh, and before we forget, my final recommendation, and I can't really go on without mentioning a fan service game, Conception 2. It's available on the Nintendo 3DS and the Vita. It's one of those games that is rated M for mature, but
For good reason.
yeah, and the subject matter, if they didn't censor it so much or they didn't like make it seem like it was more of an innuendo, the game should be like AO. But you're basically playing as this guy and there's a bunch of girls and you're at their school and there's a weird like man, like he's like I don't really remember what they considered him. I think he's like a priest or something or of this school or like some kind of like lead dude, and he basically is like the guy who at the beginning of the game hooks you up with like all this stuff, and they see like, oh, your DNA or like your genes are like really good, so time for you to mate. I don't know. I don't remember what it was called, but basically they hint towards like you're getting some action going on, and you make children, and
Your children are what you use to go through the dungeon crawler RPG element.
yes, and it's actually really deep because
That innuendo dough.
Oh,
But you basically use you, and you pick another girl to go into the dungeon with you, and then you use your children to go in the dungeon with you, and your children are basically token, so they're basically the ones that you keep around, and they die, but don't worry, because if they die, you can just go make more.
they're sacrificial lambs.
Yes. And it's one of those RPGs that is one of those really awkward ones that if somebody's watching you play it when you're actually like trying to generate more children, because it has a really strong sense of a random number generator, and when you make these children, you can make some super powerful ones if you decide to fight with like two characters. If you use yourself and then use one girl all the time, and your genes match up really well, you can really power through the game if you know what you're doing. But yeah, it's definitely a kind of unique.
And it's on the 3DS, which is always hilarious.
Right. And for those people wondering, I'm pretty sure Conception 2 was put out by Atlas.
It is.
And they're responsible for Persona series, where you unlock your persona by shooting yourself in the head with a special gun.
Yeah.
So they have a habit of doing this sort of thing.
That imagery at the beginning of Persona 3, that's...
And doesn't the Persona series have a lot of like bosses that are very phallic?
And yeah, over-sexualized, yes.
Yes, it was. I saw some bosses, and one is like a big like wiener wagon.
The Persona series definitely gets to, get away with things that other games would not be allowed to.
Going back to Ico, it is an RPG puzzle adventure.
Let's just slap RPG onto every game.
Well, you are taking the role of something. Like I could say, hey, guess what? Need for Speed Underground 2 is an RPG because, well, you're taking the role of a street racer, and well, you're technically leveling your cars up with parts. And what's the third thing?
It's
Menu-based combat,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Well, you don't really have a menu, but if you consider like your nitrous like on the screen and you're pressing a button to activate it, that's your menu.
Street Fighter 2 is an RPG because you fight things and you have a menu in the game, and plus it's a video game, therefore RPG.
Well, do you consider Shadow of the Colossus an RPG?
No. Well, there's no leveling really. You just kind of like go with your sword and say stab, stab, you're dead.
That once again, that's a really tough one because you do get progressively stronger as you beat enemies.
Yeah, but it's not really number based. It's more like it seems like it's story wise, but if you go by the numbers, you're basically dealing the same damage.
But there are blurred lines throughout the series. That there's no question about it.
Oh yeah.
But for those wondering, your go-to companies for RPGs, Atlas, Xseed, and Ixis.
I think it's Axis,
Axis.
but
I can never say it right.
yeah, I got to say one thing about Xseed, and out of the three, I actually like Xseed the most, and there's personal reasons, like they produce one of my favorite series of all time.
Xenoblades.
What?
I'm pretty sure Xseed was responsible for the Xenoblades.
Nope, that was Nintendo publishing them.
Was it? I
Yep.
thought it was Xseed. Had their name on it.
But
Xseed co-published.
Yep.
Yep. And Xseed, I think that they actually put up more of the RPGs that cater to me, but they also produce Senran Kagura, and that could be an RPG, but no. But I do like Xseed because they do really nice localization. They have one of the best localization teams because they really tweak stuff and they make it so it actually fits culture and it makes it a little bit more understandable and jokes make sense. And I don't really see that with Atlas and Axis.
It's funny because you mentioned the go-to RPG companies, and if you had said that, 15 years ago, Square Enix would definitely be on that list. But not anymore.
Square Enix hasn't been they've done good games, but they've kind of fallen off as a developer. They've lost track of who they were.
They're doing more of those action games like Hitman, like the new Hitman and the new Tomb Raiders. So that's kind of where their identity's going.
They did, however, say that they were trying to get back to their roots on where they started and what skyrocketed them. So
And doing those kind of games on current gen hardware, I think that would really be like eye popping because they can get away with a lot of like zoning and stuff, so they can make the graphics as gorgeous as possible.
One series I actually was not planning to mention at all, but it just kind of popped into my head. And this is another one that's kind of borderline, but for definitely different reasons than, say, Shadow of the Colossus. Monster Rancher.
Ooh, I actually like that game.
Have either of you, or Jason, have you played any of the Monster Rancher?
I have not.
titles?
It's been a series that I've been looking at collecting, and I will get there.
Years ago, sold my Monster Rancher games to a friend, and I just re-picked up Monster Rancher 3, and I've been playing through it like crazy. Do you know what the big gimmick with the Monster Rancher series is?
Not completely, no.
Well, you raise your own monsters in the game. You ranch them, but the way you get them is unique. Regardless if you're playing the PS1 or PS2 games, the way you get a new monster, the game tells you open up your PS1/PS2, take the game out, put any random CD or DVD into the disc tray, and it'll generate a monster from that.
I saw that feature because I only played the one on the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, so it didn't have that. But when I saw that on the PS2 version of Monster Rancher 3, not Monster Hunter, it was like really funny and cool because it's just like, oh, I wonder what this DVD will generate.
I put a whole bunch of interesting discs in it, from a Metallica CD to Metal Gear Solid on the PS1 to I was even able to put some Xbox 360 games in it because they are DVDs, and it would read it and generate monsters. And yes, I even put a hentai in it, and it did give me a really nice monster.
Did it give you one of the creepers from Minecraft?
Pretty close. What I'd like to do now is just talk about a couple RPGs we don't recommend, because you know what? No genre is perfect. What are some RPGs you would tell people to stay away from, Jason?
Well, one of these I'm gonna have to switch because it's not technically an RPG, but Final Fantasy X-2, just don't do it. It's the story doesn't make sense. If you take it for what it is, the garment system and the mascot system was fantastic, but other than that, the game it was not good. As well, there's a game called Natural Doctrine on, I think it was the PS3. It was supposed to be a tactical RPG where you could stack your units on top of each other and power up one unit's ability. Or if you put a shooter behind a tank, you could possibly have friendly fire. But if you made one little mistake, this game punished you so severely, you probably lost that match. There was no forgiveness in this game.
Wow. You mentioned X2, and yeah, I'd have to agree it's not a very good game. But there's one Final Fantasy game that's worse, in my opinion. Final Fantasy Quest. Or I believe it's actually titled The Final Fantasy Quest. On the Super Nintendo. Have you played it?
No.
Never heard of it until now.
Well, the story behind it is that with the release of Final Fantasy 4 and 5 in Japan, Square, not Square Enix, they were Square at this time, felt that they were too complicated and decided they weren't going to release them and wait for Final Fantasy 6 and release that as 3. And they're like, well, we got to give the West some sort of RPG. So they're like, all right, we'll design a Final Fantasy game from bottom up just for the Western audience. And they did, and they called it the Final Fantasy Quest. And it is, so bad. Basically, they said, Americans are going to play this game. Let's make it as stupid as possible. It seriously is like my first RPG, but in a bad way.
Yep. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest.
Mystic Quest, I'm sorry, that's what it is. I was close. I haven't played it in years, and I've tried to hide it from my memory. The game holds your hand through everything. The battle system is so simple. I'm becoming more stupid talking about it.
So it kind of just is like, quit holding my hand, please.
The game, it really shows that Square Enix, or Square, really didn't know anything about the United States, who they were specifically targeting it towards. They figured, they're just not going to understand RPGs, so let's make it as simple and dumbed down as possible. And man, does it suck. So don't play that game.
Hey, hold on. Before we move on, I need to take a break.
Are you going to buy any of the Final Fantasy VII games?
I don't know if I want to wait or not. It really depends on what price they're talking and putting them at, because people are talking that potentially they're $60, which I can't fully believe that they would do. I mean, I wouldn't put them past them to do it, but I can't fully discount them putting it $40 per game.
From what I hear, it's going to be 3 or 4 games?
It's supposed to be 3 games, and they're supposed to be, like, complete. But, like, as far as that, like, I will probably, if they're $40, yeah, I'll probably buy them. If they're 60, I will just wait until somebody sells them at work.
Or if Square Enix ends up doing, like, a compilation after they're all released.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they release special editions with a figure or an art book that are reasonable priced, I will probably be all over it. Because I'm a sucker for art books and figures.
Oh, me too. I have so many like special limited edition art books lying around my house.
My Tales of Xillia 2 is 100% sealed with figure.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what the thing that gets me even more than a figure is, though? Like the one thing that almost always makes me want the special edition, the soundtrack. I don't even listen to a lot of music, but I have this thing where if I see a video game soundtrack, I need it.
Same with me.
Are there any other games you would recommend to never buy, burn in a pit?
There's a lot.
Let's just say Kingdom Hearts Recoded.
We did not talk about Kingdom Hearts at all. To clarify, Kingdom Hearts is an RPG with action elements. It's not an action game with RPG elements. And you know what? Kingdom Hearts games are really good. I heavily enjoy them.
Except Recoded.
I do kind of agree with you on the Recoded thing. I like it a little bit, but mostly because it's pretty graphically impressive for the DS.
Oh, yeah.
But the game's dumbed down. It's simple, once again, and it's just not fun.
The controls just don't work very well with it, too, either.
Also because it was originally a cell phone game, and Square Enix wanted to really extend the game because it's short. It's very, very short. They made certain parts of it way too difficult. So I've known several people who have broken their DSs because of Recoded.
I'm sure they probably would have with Nights in the Nightmare, too. Game is just, it's terrible. Came out on the PSP, and it was an awesome concept and just falls short of everything.
That's the worst. When a game gets, a game comes so close to being good and then just falls flat on its face. That's the worst. Well, it looks like we're running down on time. We actually went longer than we were supposed to, but we just had so much to talk about.
That's because I'm here.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, but we're going to end this episode the same way we end every single Gaming Buzz episode, by asking our hosts, what game are you playing this week? So, Jason, since you're our guest here today, why don't you tell us what you're playing?
Currently, to hold me over until Dark Souls 3 comes out, and eventually Overwatch. I've been playing a Korean MMO called Skyforge, pretty hardcore as of late. And then I go back and forth between that and League of Legends to hold me over.
You're just waiting for the good stuff, huh?
Yeah, Dark Souls, I'm going to hate myself, but I have to do it.
Dark Souls is pretty fun. To be honest, my first experience playing Dark Souls at the time of recording was yesterday. I just put it off for a long time because, I'm never someone who really likes super difficult games. Like, I like a challenge, but not something that is too difficult, if you get what I'm saying. I'm a medium difficulty kind of player. So I picked up Dark Souls 2 Scholar of First Sin, and I'm just like, I gotta do it. It looks so good, so much fun, even though I know I'm gonna hate myself. And, well, I bought it yesterday evening, and I'm already 6 hours into the game, so if that tells you anything.
How many times have you died?
Oh, I've lost track.
First thing I did in that game was fall off a cliff that I didn't see.
Welcome to Dark Souls.
Yep.
And what are you playing this week, Darien?
I'm playing Hyperdementia Action Unleashed. I'm not quite sure if I'm 100% on that title because, the series has really confusing namings. But many of the viewers that have watched every episode know that I really love myself Senran Kagura. And it happens to be developed by the same developers, Tamsoft. And the regular series, which is not the Action Unleashed one, are all RPGs. But this one is actually like a horde battle game, like the Senran Kagura series. So basically this game is a clone, but without as much fan service, but it actually pokes jabs all the time by saying like, oh my god, like, why is our clothes ripping? This never happened before, but it doesn't like focus on it, and it's really hilarious. Like, that series is really funny. Like, it talks about, the entire series talks about like the console wars, and it makes fun of that. And each girl character represents a different part of the video game industry. And it's just a really hilarious game. And I have wanted to play more Senran Kagura and have more series, like more story. But I guess this game will hold me over for a little while until my hunger comes back.
For the proper name, it's Hyperdimension Neptunia U Action Unleashed.
There we go. That's too many words for a title.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember all of them. Thank you.
For now on, whenever that game is referenced on this show, henceforth it shall be known as Steve.
No, I think we should just call it the Senran Kagura clone. That's not
no, it's Steve.
Oh,
Okay, so you're playing Steve this week.
but that's Minecraft.
This week I'm going to be playing Super Mario Bros. 3. Specifically, I'm going to be playing the All-Stars version on the Super Nintendo.
You haven't lived until you played the challenge version.
I really want to play it. You have a copy, and I can't find a copy.
I also now have a homebrew copy of the Lost Levels as well.
Ooh, that's some good stuff. Darien just traded me a copy of Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, so I'm just going to power through all of them. But I figured I'd start with Super Mario Bros. 3 just because, you know what? I haven't played it in a long time, and it's fun. So that's what I'm doing. And then next week it'll probably be the Lost Levels, which
Good luck.
I don't know why I'm doing it in that order, but I'm going to do the one I can breeze through first, and then the one that's probably going to make me rip out my hair, and then the other ones.
I found Lost Levels to be slightly easier than the challenge mode.
Oh,
I had problems getting the world or level 3 in the challenge mode, and from what I saw, there is no warps.
that's scary, dude. All right. Well, that actually wraps up this episode. Thank you so much, Jason, for being on the show and sharing some of your knowledge of RPGs with us.
No problem.
If anyone out there wants to reach you, they can just hit you up at one of the GB Games locations, right?
Yep, that is correct.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show. Visit our sponsors who make this show possible by visiting gamingbuzz.com/sponsors. If you like this episode, please share it on Facebook and Twitter, or submit a show review. You can do so by visiting gamingbuzz.com/15. Gaming Buzz is a proud member of Newsmakers Podcast Network, an ever-growing network of podcasts covering many business and entertainment topics. Check them out at npcn.tv. I'm Jacob.
I'm Darien.
And I'm Jason.
Thanks for listening to Gaming Buzz. New episodes can be found on gamingbuzz.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.